Uncle Swan Marion, the Bookworm Cowboy, here to read at least two more chapters of The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis of the Chronicles of Narnia. Chapter 4, The Bell and the Hammer. There was no doubt about the magic this time. Down and down they rushed, first through darkness, and then to a mass of vague and whirling shapes, which might have been almost anything. They grew lighter. Then suddenly they felt that they were standing on something solid. A moment later, everything came into focus, and they were able to look about them. "What a queer place," said Diggory. "I didn't like it," said Polly with something like a shudder. What they noticed first was the light. It wasn't like sunlight. And it wasn't like electric light or lamps or candles or any other light they had ever seen. It was a dull, rather red light, not at all cheerful. It was steady and did not flicker. They were standing on a flat, paved surface, and buildings rose all around them. There was no roof overhead. They were in a sort of courtyard. The sky was extraordinarily dark, a blue that was almost black. When you had seen that sky, you wondered that there should be any light at all. "It's very funny weather here," said Diggory. "I wonder if we arrive just in time for a thunderstorm or an eclipse." "I didn't like it," said Polly. Both of them, without quite knowing why, were talking in whispers. And though there was no reason why they should still go on holding hands after their jump, they didn't let go. The walls rose very high all around that courtyard. They had many great windows in them, windows without glass, through which you saw nothing but black darkness. Lower down there were great pillared arches yawning blackly at the mouths of railway tunnels. It was rather cold. The stone of which everything was built seemed to be red, but that might only be because of the curious light. It was obviously very old. Many of the flat stones that paved the courtyard had cracks across them. Some of them seemed fairly close together, and the sharp corners were all worn off. One of the arched doorways was half filled up with rubble. The two children kept on turning round and round to look at different sides of the courtyard. One reason was that they were afraid of somebody or something looking out of those windows at them when their backs were turned. "You know he won't live here," said Diggory at last, still in a whisper. "No," said Polly. "It's all the ravens we have heard a sound since we came." "Let's stand still and listen for a bit," suggested Diggory. They stood still and listened, but all they could hear was the thump of their own hearts. The place was at least as quiet as the wood between the worlds, but it was a different sort of quietness. The silence of the wood had been rich and warm. You could almost hear the trees growing and full of life. This was a dead, cold, empty silence. Couldn't imagine anything growing in it. "Let's go home," said Polly. "We haven't seen anything yet," said Diggory. "Now that we're here, we must have a look around. And there's nothing at all interesting here. There's not much point in finding a magic ring that lets you do other worlds if you're afraid to look at them when you've got there." "Who's talking about being afraid?" said Polly. Then he goes Diggory's hands. "I only thought you didn't seem keen on exploring this place. I'll go anywhere you go. We can get away the moment we want to," said Diggory. Diggory. Let's take off our green wings and put them in our right hand pockets. All we've got to do is remember is that the other ones are in our left hand pockets. Keep your hand as near your pocket as you like. So put it all in or all your fat tips, your yellow and vanish. They did this and went quickly up to one of the big arched doorways, which led into the inside of the building. And when they stood on the threshold and could look in, they saw it was not so dark inside as they had thought at first. It led to a vast shadowy hall. Hold on, let me turn. So long. Which appeared to be empty. But on the far side there was a row of pillars with arches between them, and through those arches there streamed in some more of the same tired looking light. They crossed the hall, walking very carefully for fear of holes in the flooring or of anything lying about, even that they might trip over. It seemed like a long walk. When they had reached the other side, they came out through the arches and found themselves in another and larger courtyard. That doesn't look very safe, said Polly, pointing at a place where the wall bolted toward outward and looked as if it were ready to fall over into the courtyard. One place, a pillar was missing between two arches, and the bit that came down to where the top of the pillar ought to have been hung there with nothing to support it. Clearly, the place had been deserted for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. That's it, that's it now, but it'll last a bit longer, said Diggory. We must be very quiet. You know, a noise so much brings things down, like an avalanche in the Alps. They went on out of the corridor and into another doorway, up a great flight of steps into vast rooms that opened out of one another till you were dizzy with the mere sight of the size of the place. Every now and then they thought they were going to get out into the open and see what sort of country lay out around the enormous palace. Each time they only got into another courtyard. They must have been in magnificent places when people were still living there. One there would have been a fountain, a great stone monster with widespread wings, stood there with its mouth open, and you could still see a bit of piping at the back of its mouth, out of which a bit of water used to pour. Under it was a wide stone basin to hold water, but it was as dry as a bone. In other places there were the dry sticks of some sort of clam plant which had wound itself around the pillars and helped to pull some of them down. It had died long ago, and there were no ants or spiders or any of the other living things you expect to see in the room. And where the dry earth showed between the broken flagstones, there was no grass or moss. It was all so dreary and all so much the same that even Diggory was thinking they had better put on their yellow rings and get back to the warm green living forest of the in-between place. And when they had come to two huge doors of some metal that might possibly be gold, one stood a little ajar, so of course they went to look in. Both stared back and drew the long breath, for at last there was something worth seeing. For a second they thought the room was full of people, hundreds of people, all seated and all perfectly still. Holly and Diggory, as you may guess, stood perfectly still themselves for a good long time looking in. But personally, they decided that they were not looking at what they were looking at could not be real people. There was not a movement nor sound of breath among them. They were like the most wonderful waxworks you ever saw. This time Polly took the lead. There was something in this room which interested her more than it interested Diggory. All the figures were wearing magnificent clothes. You were interested in clothes at all. There's hardly help going in and seeing even another closer look. Blazes of colors make this room look not exactly cheerful. At any rate, rich and majestic after all the dust and emptiness of the others. It had more windows too, and there was a good deal lighter. How do you describe the clothes? The figures were all robed and had crowns on their heads. Some their robes were of crimson and silvery gray, and deep purple and vivid green, and there were patterns and pictures of flowers and strange beasts and needlework all over them. Precious stones of astonishing size and brightness stared from their crowns and hung in their chains around their necks, peeped out fat from all the places where easy was fastened. Why haven't they clothes all rolled away a long time ago? Asked Polly. Magic, whispered Diggory. Can't you feel it? I bet this room is stiff with enchantments. You can feel it the moment we came in. You think one of those dresses would cost hundreds of pounds? UK currency, said Polly. But Diggory was more interested in the faces, and indeed these were well worth looking at. People sat in their stone chairs on each side of the room, and the floor was left free down the middle. Walk down and look at the faces in turn. They were nice people, I think, said Diggory. Polly nodded. All the faces they could see were certainly nice. Both the men and women looked kind and handsome, wise, and they seemed to come from a handsome race. At last, the children had gone a few steps down the room. They came to faces that looked a little different. These were very solemn faces. You felt you had to mind your P's and Q's if you had ever met living people who looked like they are. When they had come a little further, they found themselves among faces they didn't like. This was about the middle of the room. Faces here looked very strong and proud and happy, but they looked cruel. A little further on, they looked crueler. Further on again, they were still cruel, but they no longer looked happy. They were even despairing faces, as if the people they belonged to had done dreadful things, and also suffered dreadful things. The last figure of all was the most interesting. A woman, even more richly dressed than the others, very tall. Every figure in that room was taller than the people of our world, with a look of such fierceness and pride that it took your breath away. Yet she was beautiful too. Years afterward, when he was an old man, he really said he had never in all his life known a woman so beautiful. He was only fair that to add that Polly always said she couldn't see anything especially beautiful about her. This woman, as I said, was the last, but there were plenty of empty chairs beyond her, as if the room had been intended for a much larger collection of the images. I do wish we knew the story that's beyond all this, said Diggory. Let's go back and look at that table sort of thing in the middle of the room. The thing in the middle of the room was not exactly a table. It was a square pillar that's about 4 feet high. On it, there rose a little bell, golden arch, from which there hung a little golden bell. And besides this, there was a little golden hammer to hit the bell with. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, said Diggory. Does he need something written here? Said Polly, scooping down and looking at the side of the pillar. Why, gun, so there is, said Diggory. But of course we shan't be able to read it. Shan't we? I'm not so sure, said Polly. They both looked at it hard, as you might have expected. There's Cumbersome were strange, but now a great wonder happened. For as they looked, though the shape of their strange letters never altered, they found there. That they could understand it, if only Diggory had remembered what he himself had said a few minutes ago, that this was an enchanted room. He might have guessed that the enchantment was beginning to work, but he was too wild with curiosity to think about that. He was longing more and more to know what was written on the pillar. Very Soon they both knew. What it said was something like this. This is the sense of it through the poetry. When you read it, there was better. Make your choice, adventure stranger. Strike the bell and bide the danger. Or wander till it drives you mad. Or would have followed if you had. No fear, said Polly. You don't want any danger. Oh, but don't you see it's no good, said Diggory. You can't get out of it now. You shall always be wondering what else would have happened if we had struck the bell. I'm not going on to be driven mad by always thinking of that. No fear. Don't be silly, said Polly, as if anyone would. But what does it matter what would have happened? It's meant anyone who's come as far as this is bound to go on wondering until it sends him dotty. That's the magic of it. You see, I can feel it beginning to work on me already. And here we come to the sexist part. But I don't, said Polly crossly. I don't believe you are just putting it on. That's all you know, said Diggory. That. uh, that's all you said, Diggory. It's because you're a girl. Girls never want to know anything but gossip and not about people getting hit and not about people getting hit. You look just exactly like your uncle when you said that, said Polly. Hmm. Why can't you keep to the point? Said Diggory. What we're talking about is exactly like a man, said Polly in a very grown up voice, but she had the history in a real voice. And don't say I'm just like a woman, you'll be a beastly copycat. I should never dream of calling a kid like you a woman, said Diggory loftily. Oh, I'm a kid, am I? Said Polly, who was now in the real rage. But you needn't be bothered by having a kid with you any longer then. I'm off. I've had enough of this place. I've had enough of you too. You piece of stuff up obstinate pig. None of that, said the green voice, even nastier than he meant to be. Bringing Polly's hand running through the parking to get over yellow ring. I can't excuse what he did next except for saying that he was very sorry for it afterward. And so were a good many other people. Before Polly's hand reached her pocket, he grabbed her wrist, leaning across her with his back against her chest. Then, keeping her other arm out of the way with his other elbow, he leaned forward, picked up the hammer, and struck the golden bell a light, smart. Then he let her go, and they fell apart, staring at each other and breathing hard. I had just begun to cry, not with fear, but not even because he had heard her wrist quite loud, but with furious anger. Within 2 seconds, however, they had something to think about that drove their own quarrels quite out of their minds. As soon as the bell was struck, he gave out a note, a sweet note such as you might have expected, not very loud. Instead of dying all the way, again it went on. As it went on, it grew louder. For a minute that passed, it was twice as loud, and as it had been to begin with. It was soon so loud that if the children had tried to speak, but they weren't thinking or speaking now, they were just standing with their mouths open. They would not have heard at one another. Very soon it was so loud that they could not have heard one another, even by shouting. It still grew all in one note, continuous sweet sound, though the sweetness had something horrible about it, till all the air in that room was throbbing with it. They could feel the stone floor trembling under their feet. Then at last it began to be mixed with another sound, a vague, disastrous noise which sounded first like a roar of a distant train. Mm. Mm. Train. And then like the crash of a falling tree, they heard something like great weights falling Finally, with a sudden rush and thunder and a shake that nearly flung them off their feet, about a quarter of the roof at one end of the room fell in. Great blocks of masonry fell around all around them, and the walls rocked. The noise of the bells stopped. Clouds of dust cleared away. Everything became quiet again. It was never found out whether the fall of the roof was due to magic or whether that unbearable loud sound from the bell just happened to strike the note, which was more than the common laws could stand. There, I hope you're satisfied now, ended Polly. It's all over anyway, said Diggory. They both thought it was, that they never made a more mistakes in their lives. Yeah. Chapter 5. The Deplorable Word. The children were facing one another across the pillar where the bell hung, still trembling, though it no longer gave out any note. Suddenly they heard the soft noise from the end of the room, which was still undamaged. They turned quick as lightning to see what it was. One of the robed figures, furthest off one of all. The woman whom Diggory thought was so beautiful was rising from its chair. When she stood up, they realized that she was even taller than they had thought. And when you could see at once, not only from her crown and robes, but from the flash of her eyes and the curve of her lips, she was a great world queen. She looked around the room and saw the damage and saw the children. But you could not guess from her face what she thought of either or whether she was surprised. She came forward with long, swift strides. Who has awakened me? Who has broken the spell? She asked. I think it might have been me, said Diggory. You, said the queen, laying her hand on his shoulder, a white, beautiful hand, but Diggory could feel that it was strong as steel pincers. You, but you are only a child, a common child. Anyone can see at a glance that you have no drop of royal or noble blood in your veins. How did you, such as you, dare to enter this house? We come from another world, said my magic, said Polly, who thought it was high time the queen took some notice of her as well as Diggory. Is this true? Said the queen, still looking at Diggory and not giving Polly an even glance. Yes, it is, said he. Queen put her other hand under his chin and forced it up so that she could see his face better. Diggory tried to stare back, but he soon had to let his eyes drop. There was something about hers that overpowered him. After she had studied him for well over a minute, she let go of his chin and said, You are no magician. The market is all on you. You must be only the servant of a magician. It is on another man on this matter that you have traveled in. It was my Uncle Andrews, said Diggory. At the moment, not in the room itself, but from somewhere very close, there came first a rumbling, then a creaking, then a roar of falling masonry, and the floor shook. There is a great peril here, said the queen. The whole house is breaking up, and for an all out of it, in a few minutes we shall be carried under the ruin. She spoke as calmly as if she had been merely mentioning the time of the day. Come, she added, and held out a hand to each of the children. Polly was disliking the queen and felt rather sulky. Love let her hand be taken if she could have let her hand be taken if she could have helped it. But though the queen spoke so calmly, woman was his quickest thought. Before Polly knew what was happening to her, left hand had been caught in a hand so much larger and stronger than her own that she could not do nothing about it. This is a terrible woman, thought Polly. She's strong enough to break my arm with one twist. Now that she's got my left hand, I can't get out my little ring. Tried to stretch across and get my right hand into my left pocket. I might be able to reach it. Well, she asked me what I was doing. Never happens, we mustn't let her know the rings. Do you think he has a sense to keep his mouth shut? I wish I could get a word with him alone. The queen led them out of the hall of Venetia's into a long corridor and then through a whole maze of halls and stairs and courtyards. Again and again they heard parts of the great palace collapsing, some quite close to them. Once a huge arch came thundering on the moon after they passed through it. The queen was walking quickly. Children had to keep up with her, had to try to keep up with her, but she showed no sign of fear. They thought, she's wonderfully brave and strong. She's what I call a queen. Maybe she's going to tell us the story of this place. She did tell them certain things as they went along. This is the door to the dungeon, she would say. Or that matches these to the principal torture chambers. Or this was my old great home when my great-grandfather paid 700 nobles to a feast and killed them all before they took their fill. He had rebellions and assaults. He came at last into a hall larger and loftier than any that they had yet seen, with its size and from the great doors at the far end. Diggory thought that now that they might be coming to the main entrance. In this he was quite right. The doors were dead black, either ebony or some black metal which is not found in our world. They were fastened with great bars. Most of them were too high to reach and too heavy to lift. Wondered how they could get out. The queen let go of his hand and raised her arm. She drew herself up to her full height and stood rigid. Then she said something which they couldn't understand, which sounded horrid, and made an action of she was throwing something toward the doors. And those high, heavy doors trembled for a second, as if they were made of silk, and then crumbled away, till there was nothing left of them but a heap of dust on the threshold. It was Diggory. Has your master magician yoga power like mine? Asked the queen, firmly seizing Diggory's hand again. I shall learn later. In the meantime, remember what you have seen. This will happen to things and the people who stand in my way. Much of the light, and more light than they had ever seen in the country, was pouring into the now empty doorways. And when the queen led them out through it, they were surprised to find themselves in the open air. Wind that blew in their faces was cold, but yet somehow stale. They were looking from a high terrace, and there was a great landscape spread out below them. Low down and near the horizon hung a great red sun, far bigger than our sun. Diggory felt as once that it was also older than ours. A sun that was near the end of its life, weary of looking down upon that world. To the left of the sun and higher up, there was a single star, big and bright. Those were the only two things to be seen in the dark sky. They made a dismal group. And on the earth in every direction, as far as the eye could see, there was a vast city in which there was no living thing to be seen. And all the temples, towers, palaces, pyramids, and bridges cast long, disastrous-looking shadows in the light of that withered sun. Once a great river had flowed through the city, but the water had long since vanished. It was now only a wide ditch of gray dust. Look well on that which no eyes will ever see again, said the queen. Such was John, a great city of the king of kings, the wonder of the world, perhaps of all worlds. castle really steady as great as this boy? No, said Diggory. He was going to explain that Alexander didn't rule any cities, but the Queen went on. Yes, I know. But I have stood here when the whole air was filled with the noise of charm, trampling of the feet, the breaking of wheels, the cracking of the whips, and the groaning of slaves, the thunder of chariots, and sacrificial drums beating in the temples. I have stood here, but that was near the end. The roar of battle went up with a very speed, and the river of John ran red. She paused and added, all in one woman plotted it out forever. Who? Said the green faint voice. You already guessed the answer. I, said the queen. I, Jagus, the last queen, but the queen of the world. The two children stood silent, shivering in the cold wind. It was my sister's fault, said the queen. She drove me to it. May the curse of all the powers rest upon her forever. At any moment I was ready to make peace. Yes, I despaired, always do. Only she would yield to me the throne. She would not. Her pride had destroyed the whole world. And after the war had begun, there was all kinds of neither side would use magic. When she broke her promise, what could I do? Fool! As if she did not know that more magic than she. She even knew that the secret of the deplorable word. Did she think that she was always a weakling? I would not use it. What was it? Said Diggory. The secret of secrets, said the Queen Judith. It has long been known to the great kings of our race that there was one word which, spoken with the proper ceremonies, would destroy all living except the one that spoke it. The ancient kings were weak and soft-hearted and found themselves, and all who should come after them with great oaths never had been to seek after the knowledge of that word. But I had learned in the secret place and paid a terrible price to learn it. I did not use it until she forced me to it. Fought to overcome her by every other means. Poured out the blood of my armies like water. Peace! Rather than probably last great battle, said the Queen. Raged for 3 days before here in Charn itself. For 3 days I looked down upon it from this very spot. I used my power to the last of my soldiers had fallen, and the accursed woman, my sister, at the head of her rebels, was halfway up those great stairs that led up from the city into the terrace. Then I waited to see till we were so close that we could see one another's faces. She flashed her horrible wicked eyes upon me and said, Victory! Yes, said I, victory, not yours. Then I spoke. The deplorable word. A moment later, I was the only living thing beneath the sun. But the people, gasped Diggory. What people, boy? Asked the Queen. All the ordinary people, said Polly, who never done you any harm. The women, the children, and the animals. Don't you understand? Said the Queen, thus speaking to Diggory. I was the Queen. There were all my people. What else were they there but to do my will? Hardly look for them all the same, said he. As for calling that you are only a common boy, how should you understand reasons of state? You must learn, child, that what would be wrong for you or for any of the common people it is not wrong for such great queens such as I. The weight of the world is on her soldiers. You must be freed from all rules. Ours is a high and lonely destiny. Diggory remembered that Uncle Andrew had used exactly those words, the same words. They sounded much grander when Queen Judith said them, perhaps because Uncle Andrew was not 7 feet tall and dazzling beautiful. And what did you do then? Said Diggory. I had already cast strong spells on the hall where the images of my ancestors sit. And the first of those spells was that I should sleep among them. I can image myself, need neither food nor fire. It was 1,000 years. The one came and struck the bell and awoke me. Was it the deplorable world that made the sun like that? Like what? Said Judas. So big, so red, and so cold. It has always been so, said Jadis. At least for hundreds of thousands of years. Have you noticed there is also sun in your world? Yes. Smaller and yellower. Gives a great deal more of heat. The queen gave a long drawn. Ah! And Diggory saw on her face that same hungry and greedy look which he had lately seen on Uncle Andrew's. So, she said, yours is a younger world. She paused for a moment to look once more at the deserted city, and if she was sorry for all the evil she had done there, but she certainly didn't see it. And let us be going. It's cold here at the end of all the ages. Going where? Asked Beltitude. Where? Repeated Cheers in surprise. To your will, of course. Polly and Diggory looked at each other, aghast. Polly had decided to move from the first, and even Diggory, now that he had heard the story, felt that he had not seen quite as much of her as he wanted. Certainly she was not at all the person one would like to take home. If they did they didn't know how they could. What they wanted was to get away for themselves. Polly couldn't get at her ring, and of course Diggory couldn't go without her. Diggory got very red in the face and stammered, I will. I didn't know you wanted to go there. And I didn't send me here for not to fetch me, said Jadis, asked Jadis. I'm sure you wouldn't like your world at all, said Diggory. It's not the sort of place it is at Polly. It's very dull, not worth seeing really. It will be worth seeing what I through it, answered the Queen. Oh no, you can't, said Diggory. It's not like that. He wouldn't let you, you know. The Queen, you were contemptuous. Maybe a great king, she said, thought they could stand against all of John, but they all fell. Their names, very names, forgotten. Foolish boy. Do you think that I, with my beauty and my magic, will not have your will? Or will let my feet before a year has passed? Prepare your incantation and take me there at once. This is perfectly frightful, said Diggory to Polly. Perhaps you're fearing for this uncle of yours, said Janus. But if he only speak duty, he shall keep his heart in his throne. I am coming to fight against him. He must be a great magician. He has found the art to send you here. Is he a king of your home or only part of it? He isn't king of anywhere, said Diggory. You are lying, said the queen. Does not magic always go with the royal blood? We ever heard of common people being magicians? You can't conceal the truth whether you speak it or not. Your uncle is a great king and the great enchanter of your world. And by his art he has seen the shadow of my face, magic mirror or some enchanted pool. For the love of my beauty he has made a potent spell which shook your world into its foundations. And sent you across the vast scope the world blessed for my fame to bring up the wind. Answer me, is that how it was? Well, not exactly, said Diggory. Not exactly, said Shadowbright. It's absolutely bosh from beginning to end. Idiots! Cried the Queen, turning in a rage upon Polly and seizing her hair, very top of her head where it hurt the most. But so doing, she let both of the children's hands. Now! Shouted Diggory, and quick! Shouted Polly. They plunged their left hands into their pockets. They do not even need to put their rings on. The moment they touched them, the whole of that dreary world vanished from their eyes. They were rushing upward, and the warm green light was growing nearer overhead. That's the end of these two chapters.